My fiancée Stella Park had always been obsessed with wealth and status, constantly complaining about my modest tech startup salary. But when a mysterious billionaire named Felix Brown appeared at our engagement party offering her everything, I couldn't. She didn't hesitate to abandon me at the altar, choosing his private jet and promises of luxury over our 3-year relationship. She said a woman like her deserved diamonds and penthouses, not a struggling entrepreneur's dreams. What Stella didn't know was that Felix Brown wasn't actually a billionaire at all. He was my employee, a junior developer I'd hired to test her. Loyalty after discovering her secret dating app conversations with wealthy men. The moment she chose his fake fortune over our real love, my suspicions were confirmed, and her betrayal became the perfect trap that would expose who she truly was. I stood on that engagement party stage in my tailored navy suit, watching my plan unfold exactly as I'd designed it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Arthur Watson, and 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was the founder of CloudSync Technologies, a promising software startup in downtown Millbrook that specialized in data management solutions for small businesses. Sure, we weren't making millions yet, but we had steady clients, a dedicated team of 12 employees, and genuine potential for growth. Most importantly, I had Stella Park, the woman I believed would be my wife. Stella and I met at a networking event 3 years ago at the Paramount Hotel's Tech Mixer. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a luxury real estate firm called Prestige Properties, and I was immediately struck by her sophistication. She had this way of carrying herself, elegant posture, designer clothes that somehow made everyone else look underdressed, and a laugh that could command attention across a crowded room. When she gave me her business card, her manicured nails caught the light, and I noticed the small Cartier bracelet on her wrist. Even then, I should have recognized the signs. Our relationship progressed naturally, or so I thought. We'd meet for dinner at upscale restaurants in the Harbor District, where Stella would always order the most expensive items on the menu without glancing at the prices. She'd talk enthusiastically about her clients' multi-million-dollar penthouses, describing marble countertops and infinity pools with genuine longing in her voice. "One day, Arthur," she'd say, placing her hand over mine, "we'll have all of this too." I found her ambition charming at first. Stella had grown up in a middle class family in Oakville, her father working as an insurance agent and her mother as a nurse. She'd worked hard to reinvent herself, learning about wine, fashion, and art to fit into the luxury real estate world. I admired her drive to better herself, to reach for something greater. What I didn't realize was that she saw me as a stepping stone rather than a destination. The first red flag appeared about a year into our relationship. I'd picked her up from work for our anniversary dinner, and while waiting in my car, I noticed her animated conversation with a man in a silver Porsche. Through the window, I could see her touching his arm and laughing in that special way, the same way she used to laugh with me. She got in my car, I asked casually, "Who was that?" "Oh, just a client," she said dismissively, checking her makeup in the mirror. "Richard something is buying a property in Sunset Hills for $8 million. The way she said $8 million had a reverence to it, like she was speaking about something sacred. Over the following months, there were more incidents. I'd catch her checking her phone constantly, typing messages with a secretive smile. When I asked who she was texting, she'd always have a ready excuse. My assistant, a difficult client, my sister. But I noticed she'd started working later, attending more client events, and coming home with expensive gifts she claimed were thank you presents from grateful buyers. The breaking point came 6 weeks. Before our engagement party, I'd forgotten my laptop charger at her apartment and went back to retrieve it. Stella was in the shower, and her phone was buzzing on the nightstand. The screen showed a message from someone named RH that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear the necklace I bought you." I stared at that message for a long moment, my world tilting sideways. The necklace she'd claimed was from a grateful client suddenly made perfect sense. I took a screenshot and quickly put her phone back exactly where I'd found it. That night, as Stella showed off her new necklace at dinner, I watched her carefully. She was radiant, glowing with the kind of happiness that comes from feeling desired and appreciated. But it wasn't me making her feel that way. It was just the reliable boyfriend, the safe choice, the one who'd be there while she explored better options. I spent the next week in a state of numbness, going through the motions of normalcy while my mind raced. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to demand an explanation and fight for our relationship. But a larger part of me needed to know the truth, the complete truth. How deep did this betrayal go? Was this a momentary weakness, or had our entire relationship been a lie? That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I needed to test Stella's loyalty, to create a scenario where her true priorities would be revealed beyond any doubt. I needed someone she'd never met, someone who could offer her everything I couldn't, someone who could make her choose between love and money. I thought about hiring a private investigator or actor, but I needed someone I could trust completely, someone who understood the stakes and would follow through with precision. As I sat in my office the next morning, looking out at my team of developers working diligently at their desks, the solution became obvious. Felix Brown had been with CloudSync for 8 months, hired fresh out of college with a computer science degree from State University, was talented, reliable, and had an interesting background. His father was a successful businessman, and Felix had grown up around wealth before choosing a more modest path in tech development. Most importantly, he had the kind of polished confidence that comes from privilege. Even if he'd chosen to live simply, I called Felix into my office that afternoon and closed the door behind him. "Felix, I need to ask you to do something unusual." I began, studying his reaction. "Something that goes beyond your normal job responsibilities." He leaned forward, curious. "What do you need, Mr. Watson?" Laid out my plan. Felix would create a false identity as a wealthy investor and interested in acquiring small tech companies. He'd approach Stella at one of her real estate events, charm her with stories of his success, and see how far she'd be willing to go to secure a relationship with a billionaire. I'd provide him with the resources to maintain the charade rental cars, expensive clothes, whatever he needed to be convincing. Felix listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious as I explained the full scope of what I was asking. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Watson," he said finally, "are you sure you want to know the truth? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." I thought about Stella's secret messages, her late nights, the way she looked at expensive things with hunger in her eyes. "I need to know who I'm really marrying," I replied. "If she's loyal, then we'll call off the test and I'll know I can trust her completely. If she's not, ... I left the sentence hanging. Felix nodded slowly. "Let's find out who Stella Park really is." The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception and patience. Felix threw himself into his role with an almost theatrical dedication that impressed even me. We opened a business account under the name Brownstone Investment Group, funded it with enough money to appear legitimate, and created a complete digital footprint website, LinkedIn profile, even fake news articles about his successful acquisitions that our IT specialists, Caleb Lombardi, crafted with remarkable skill. Felix transformed his appearance entirely. Gone was the casual developer in jeans and sneakers, replaced by a sophisticated investor in tailored suits from Bergman and Associates downtown. He practiced his backstory until it was flawless. Heir to a manufacturing fortune, Harvard MBA, current net worth of $47 million. We even rented him a penthouse suite at the Metropolitan Tower for appearances and leased a midnight blue, my Tesla Model S that made my Honda Civic look like a toy in comparison. The plan was elegantly simple. Felix would attend the quarterly real estate gala at the Grandview Convention Center, where Stella's firm always had a major presence. He'd approach her naturally, express interest in purchasing a luxury property, and see where the conversation led. If Stella remained professional and mentioned her engagement to me, we'd know she was loyal. If she became flirtatious or receptive to his advances, we'd have our answer. I spent the evening of the gala at home, supposedly working on a client presentation, but actually pacing my apartment like a caged animal. Felix had promised to text me regular updates, but as the hours crawled by, my phone remained silent. By 11 p.m., I was alternating between nausea and rage, imagining every possible scenario. What if Stella saw through the deception? Felix developed real feelings for her. What if I was making the biggest mistake of my life? Finally, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Felix. "We need to talk. Come to the office early tomorrow." I'd barely slept that night. I arrived at CloudSync at 6 a.m. to find Felix already there, still in his expensive suit, but with his tie loosened and his usually perfect hair disheveled. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Arthur," he said when he saw me, "I'm so sorry." Those 3 words told me everything I needed to know, but I had to hear the details. Felix explained how Stella had approached him within minutes of his arrival at the gala, drawn by his obvious wealth and confidence. She'd been breathtakingly beautiful that night, he admitted, wearing a stunning red dress that probably costs more than most people's monthly salaries. "She told me she was in real estate," Felix continued, his voice heavy with regret. "When I mentioned I was looking for a property in the $10 million range, her eyes literally lit up. She spent the entire evening showing me listings on her phone, touching my arm, laughing at everything I said. I sat down heavily in my office chair. Did she mention me at all?" Felix's silence was answer enough, but he eventually shook his head. When I asked if she was seeing anyone, she said she was between relationships and focusing on her career. She gave me her personal number and suggested we have dinner to discuss properties. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of relationship, and I was so insignificant that she could erase me from existence when a better option appeared. But this was only the beginning. Over the next month, Felix and Stella's fake relationship developed at a pace that shocked both of us. She was completely convinced by his wealthy investor persona, and her behavior became increasingly bold. Send him photos of expensive jewelry with hints about her birthday. She'd forward him listings for penthouses they could view together. Most damning of all, she began making excuses to cancel our dates while simultaneously posting cryptic social media messages about exciting new opportunities. I watched my fiancée fall in love with money personified, and it was both heartbreaking and enlightening. The woman I thought I knew, thoughtful, hardworking, loyal, revealed herself to be calculating, materialistic, and ruthlessly opportunistic. She would text me about having to work late while posting Instagram stories from expensive restaurants with her client, Felix. She'd claim exhaustion while her social media showed her vibrant and radiant during her secret dates. The cruelest irony was that she became more affectionate with me during this period, perhaps trying to assuage her guilt. She'd surprise me with expensive dinners, buy me designer clothes I'd never asked for, and talk enthusiastically about our future together. But I could see the performance now, the way she was going through the motions while her heart and attention were elsewhere. 3 weeks before our engagement party, Felix delivered the final piece of evidence I needed. Stella had asked him to be her date to a charity auction at the Ocean View Country Club, claiming she needed to network with potential high-end clients. When he hesitated, she'd broken down and confessed that she was engaged but willing to leave her fiancés for the right man. "She said you were sweet but broke," Felix reported with visible discomfort. "That she deserved someone who could give her the lifestyle she'd always dreamed of. She asked if I was serious about a relationship with her." Stared out my office window at the city skyline, processing this final betrayal. Stella wasn't just cheating. She was actively planning to trade me in for a richer model. Our engagement party, which I'd thought would be a celebration of our love, is actually just a formality she was enduring before making her escape. That's when I made the decision that would define everything that followed, instead of confronting Stella privately or calling off the engagement quietly. I would let her make her choice publicly. I would give her exactly what she wanted, the opportunity to choose wealth over love in front of everyone who mattered to us. I instructed Felix to make his move at our engagement party itself. He would arrive as an uninvited guest, reveal his interest in acquiring my company, and offer Stella the chance to leave with him immediately. It would be her final test, the ultimate moment of truth. "Are you sure about this?" Felix asked when I outlined the plan. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship will be over and everyone will know exactly what kind of person she is." I thought about the 3 years I'd invested in Stella, the ring I'd bought with money I'd saved for months, the future I'd imagined with someone who apparently saw me as a temporary inconvenience. "She's already made her choice," I told Felix. "I'm just going to let her announce it publicly." As our engagement party approached, I found myself in the strange position of planning my own humiliation. I arranged the venue, the elegant sunset terrace overlooking crystal by-ordered flowers, confirmed catering, and sent invitations to family and friends who would soon witness the destruction of my relationship. Stella helped with the planning enthusiastically, perhaps seeing it as her farewell performance before moving on to bigger and better things. The morning of the party, stood in my bathroom mirror adjusting my navy suit and wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. But then I thought about Stella's secret messages, her lies, her willingness to erase my existence for a stranger with money. And I knew I had to see this through. I deserved to know who I was really marrying. And more importantly, everyone else deserved to know who Stella Park really was. The sunset terrace was transformed into something magical that evening. String lights creating a canopy of stars above our guests, and the bay providing a glittering backdrop to what should have been the happiest night of our lives. 200 friends and family members filled the space, chatting and laughing while servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. My parents had flown in from Portland, and Stella's entire extended family was there, beaming with pride at their successful daughter's engagement to an entrepreneur. I stood near the small stage where we would exchange vows and rings, watching Stella work the crowd with practiced grace. She was stunning in her emerald green dress, color that brought out her eyes and complemented the diamond engagement ring that caught the light every time she gestured. She moved from group to group, accepting congratulations and compliments, with the kind of radiant smile that made everyone feel special. To an outside observer, she was the picture of a happy bride-to-be. But I could see the performance now. I noticed how her eyes would dart to her phone whenever she thought no one was looking. I saw the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her smile became more forced as the evening progressed. She was waiting for something or someone at 8:30. Just as the formal ceremony was about to begin, Felix made his entrance. He walked into the venue like he owned it. In many ways he did, spent nearly $10,000 of company funds on his appearance alone. His charcoal gray suit was impeccably tailored. His watch was a genuine Rolex Submariner we'd purchased from a luxury dealer, and he carried himself with the kind of confident ease that only comes from knowing you're the most important person. In the room, the effect was immediate. Conversations quieted as heads turned to identify this impressive stranger who hadn't been on the guest list. Felix scanned the crowd with practiced nonchalance until his eyes found Stella. Even from across the room, I could see her face transform surprise, recognition, and then something that looked suspiciously like relief. Felix approached our group. Near the stage with the kind of slow, purposeful stride that draws attention, several of my groomsmen colleagues from Cloud Sync, who had no idea what was about to unfold, watched him with curiosity and slight concern. My father leaned over to ask, "Arthur, who is that man?" Before I could answer, Felix extended his hand to me with a smile that was both friendly and predatory. "Arthur Watson? Felix Brown, Brownstone Investment Group? I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I was in town and couldn't pass up the opportunity to meet the founder of Cloud Sync Technologies." I shook his hand, playing my part in the charade. "Mr. Brown, this is unexpected. Tonight's my engagement party." "Congratulations," Felix replied smoothly, his eyes finding Stella. "And you must be the lucky bride. I've heard so much about you." Stella's face went through a rapid series of expressions, confusion, panic, and then calculation. She recovered quickly, extending her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Stella Park. I don't believe we've met." The lie was so smooth, so effortless, that for a moment I almost believed it myself. Here was the woman I'd planned to marry, standing in front of 200 witnesses, denying any knowledge of the man she'd been secretly dating for weeks. If I'd had any lingering doubts about her character, they evaporated in that instant. "Felix, played his part perfectly. Actually, I believe we have met. At the real estate gala last month, he showed me some beautiful properties. His tone was casual, friendly, but I could see Stella's face growing pale. I meet a lot of clients. She stammered, her composure finally cracking. I'm sorry, I don't remember. The guests around us were beginning to sense the tension. My mother moved closer, her protective instincts activated by the strange undercurrent of the conversation. Stella's father, a shrewd man who'd built his insurance business by reading people, was watching Felix with narrowed eyes. Felix smiled and continued his performance. Of course, you meet many people in your line of work. Actually, Arthur, that's partly why I'm here. I've been following CloudSync's progress, and I'm very interested in discussing an acquisition. We're talking about a substantial offer potentially. $40 million. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Now, $40 million. I watched the guests process this information, saw the way their expressions changed as they looked at me with new respect. But I was watching Stella, and what I saw there confirmed everything I'd suspected. Her eyes widened with unmistakable hunger. This wasn't surprise or congratulations for my success. This was the look of someone seeing their dreams materialize in front of them. For just a moment, she forgot to maintain her facade, and I saw the raw desire that had been driving her all along. That's incredible, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Felix nodded seriously. The offer comes with certain conditions, of course. I like to work closely with my acquisition targets, build personal relationships. In fact, I was hoping to discuss the details over dinner tomorrow night. Perhaps you'd join us, Miss Park. Your perspective on Arthur's business acumen would be valuable. It was beautifully done. Felix had created the perfect trap and invitation that appeared professional but carried deeper implications, especially given their secret history. Stella could accept and reveal her willingness to continue their relationship, or decline and maintain her loyalty to me. The moment stretched endlessly. Our guests watched expectantly, probably wondering why this business discussion was happening at an engagement party. My parents looked confused but proud of the validation of their son's success. Stella's family appeared impressed by the magnitude of the offer, but I was watching Stella's face, seeing the internal war being fought behind her eyes. I could practically see her calculating $40 million meant financial security, luxury, everything she'd ever dreamed of. And Felix, with his wealth and sophistication, represented access to that world in a way that I never could. She began, then stopped, looking around at all the expectant faces. Actually, could we step aside for a moment? This is quite overwhelming. My heart pounded as I realized what was happening. She was going to do it, here at our engagement party in front of everyone we cared about. Stella was going to choose money over love. Felix nodded understanding. Of course, perhaps we could speak privately. As they moved toward a quieter corner of the terrace, I followed, along with several curious family members. The rest of the party continued around us, but there was a growing sense that something significant was happening in the shadows near the railing overlooking the bay. Stella's mask finally slipped completely. She looked at Felix with desperate eyes and said, "Is this real? The offer, I mean? $40 million? It's very real," Felix confirmed. "But as I mentioned, I like to work closely with my partners, build personal relationships. I think you understand what I'm suggesting." Stella glanced back at me, standing with our families, and I saw the exact moment she made her choice. Something shifted in her expression, a hardening, a decision reached. When she looked back at Felix, it was with the smile of someone who'd just solved a complicated problem. "I think we should definitely discuss this further," she said, her voice gaining strength. "When did you want to have dinner?" "Actually," Felix said, pulling out his phone with theatrical timing, "my jet is at Millbrook Airport right now. I'm flying to Miami tonight for another deal. If you're serious about exploring this opportunity, you could come with me. We could hash out the details on the way." It was the ultimate test to abandon her engagement party and fiancés to fly away with a man offering wealth and status. I held, my breath already knowing what her answer would be, but still hoping, somehow, that I was wrong. Stella looked at me one more time, and in her eyes I saw not love or regret, but calculation. She was measuring the value of our 3-year relationship against the promise of luxury and finding us wanting.
Arthur!
She called out, her voice carrying clearly in the evening air. Could you come here for a moment? I walked over, feeling like I was moving through water. Everyone was watching now. The party had essentially stopped as our drama unfolded. Arthur, Stella said, taking my hands in hers, I need to tell you something important. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've realized that we want different things in life. You're content with your small business dreams, but I need more. I deserve more. The gasps from our families were audible. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and I could see Stella's parents exchange horrified glances. I'm sorry, Stella continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. But Mr. Brown has offered me the kind of life I've always wanted. A life of sophistication, travel, luxury. I can't pretend anymore that I'm happy with mediocrity. She slipped off her engagement ring and pressed it into my palm. I hope someday you'll understand. This isn't about love, it's about living the life I was meant to live. With that, she turned to Felix and smiled. I'd love to go to Miami with you. Let's discuss this amazing opportunity. As they walked toward the exit together, I stood frozen, holding the ring that had cost me 3 months' salary. Watching the woman I'd loved publicly humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered to us. The silence was deafening. Then, slowly, the whispers began, shocked murmurs of disbelief from guests who couldn't process what they'd just witnessed. But I wasn't devastated. I was vindicated. The test had worked perfectly. Stella Park had shown everyone exactly who she really was. The moment Stella and Felix disappeared through the exit, chaos erupted at the Sunset Terrace. My mother rushed to my side, her face pale with shock and maternal fury. Arthur, sweetheart, I can't believe. How could she? What kind of woman does that? She was practically vibrating with indignation, her voice rising with each word. Stella's parents looked absolutely mortified. Her composed insurance executive was red-faced and stuttering apologies. Arthur, we had no idea. Stella, never. This is completely unacceptable behavior. Her mother was quietly crying into her handkerchief, probably realizing that their daughter had just destroyed relationships that had taken years to build. Guests didn't know whether to leave, stay, or pretend nothing had happened. Some began gathering their things, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama they'd witnessed. Others clustered in small groups, whispering and stealing glances at me. I could hear fragments of their conversations. Can you believe, ... poor Arthur, ... what kind of person, ... But the strangest thing was happening inside me. Dead of the crushing devastation everyone expected to see, I felt relief. 3 years of uncertainty, of questioning my instincts, of wondering if I was being paranoid, all of it was finally over. The woman I thought I knew had revealed herself completely, and she was exactly who I'd suspected her to be. My best man, Owen Davies, approached cautiously. Arthur, man, I don't even know what to say. Are you okay? Do you want me to go after them? I shook my head, surprising him with my composure. No, Owen, let them go. This is actually the best thing that could have happened. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Best thing? Dude, you just got humiliated in front of 200 people. Your fiancée literally ran off with another man at your engagement party. How is this the best thing? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Felix. Phase 1 complete. Should I proceed with Phase 2? I couldn't help but smile as I typed back, yes. Time for the grand finale. Owen saw my expression and grabbed my arm. Arthur, what's going on? You're scaring me. You should be devastated right now, not ... whatever this is. I looked around at the confused faces of our families and friends, all of them united in there. Sympathy for poor, betrayed Arthur Watson. In about 15 minutes, their entire understanding of tonight's events was going to flip upside down. Trust me, Owen, I said, patting his shoulder. Everything is going exactly according to plan. 20 minutes later, just as the venue staff was beginning to clean up the abandoned party, Felix returned. But he wasn't wearing his expensive suit anymore. Instead, he was back in his usual casual clothes, jeans, sneakers, and a cloud sync. Technology's company t-shirt. The transformation was so complete that several guests didn't even recognize him at first. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, drawing everyone's attention, "before you leave, I have an announcement to make, something I think you'll all find very interesting." The remaining guests turned toward me, probably expecting some kind of breakdown or emotional speech about betrayal and heartbreak instead. I gestured toward Felix, who was walking back toward our group with his hands in his pockets and a sheepish expression on his face. "I'd like you all to meet Felix Brown," I announced. "Not the billionaire investor who just stole my fiancée, but Felix Brown, junior developer at CloudSync Technologies. He's been my employee for 8 months, and for the past 6 weeks, he's been helping me conduct the most important test of my life. The silence that followed was even more profound than the one after Stella's departure. I could see people processing this information, their faces cycling through confusion, realization, and then shock all over again. My father was the first to speak. "Arthur, ... Are you saying that man wasn't really a billionaire?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied. "Felix has been playing a role. We created a fake investment company, rented expensive clothes and cars, and invented an entire persona designed to test whether Stella would choose wealth over love." Stella's father stepped forward, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You mean to tell me that you orchestrated this entire thing? That you deliberately sabotaged your own engagement party?" "I didn't sabotage anything," I said firmly. "I simply gave Stella a choice. She could have told Felix she was engaged and declined his offer. She could have remained loyal to our relationship. Instead, she chose exactly what I suspected she would: choose money over love, status over loyalty." Felix stepped up beside me, looking somewhat uncomfortable but resolute. "Mr. Watson asked me to approach Stella at a real estate gala 6 weeks ago. Within 5 minutes of meeting me, she was flirting, giving me her personal number, claiming she was between relationships. She never mentioned Arthur once." The gasps from the crowd were audible. Stella's mother looked like she might faint. "For the past month and a half," Felix continued, "Stella has been dating me under the belief that I was a wealthy investor. She's been planning to leave Arthur for someone with more money. Tonight wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was the culmination of weeks of deception on her part." Owen was staring at me with a mixture of admiration and horror. "Arthur, this is ... This is insane. You planned this whole thing?" "I had to know who I was really marrying," I explained. "And now everyone knows exactly who Stella Park is. Someone who will abandon a 3-year relationship and humiliate her fiancé in front of his family for the promise of a richer man. That's not the kind of person I want to build a life with." My mother, who had been silent throughout this revelation, suddenly spoke up. "Arthur, sweetheart, I'm proud of you." Her voice was strong and clear. "That woman showed her true colors tonight, and it's better you found out now than after you were married." Stella's parents, however, looked devastated. The humiliation of their daughter's public betrayal was now compounded by the realization that she'd been caught in an elaborate trap of her own making. "Where is she now?" Stella's father asked quietly. Felix and I exchanged glances, while Felix said with a slight grin, "About 10 minutes ago." I told her the truth. I explained that I'm not actually a billionaire, that there's no private jet, and that the whole thing was a test arranged by her fiancé. "How did she take it?" Owen asked, clearly fascinated despite himself. "Let's just say she's currently stranded at Millbrook Airport with no ride home and a very bruised ego," Felix replied. "She's been calling and texting both of us non-stop, but we're not answering." I looked around at the faces of our family and friends, seeing understanding and even approval replacing the initial shock. These people had watched Stella's performance tonight, had seen her calculated cruelty and materialistic priorities in action. They knew I'd dodged a bullet. "So what happens now?" my father asked. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Now I get my life back. I've learned something valuable about the kind of person I want to actually spend my life with." As the guests began to process this information and started gathering their things to leave, I felt a strange sense of completion. The test was over, the truth was revealed. Everyone could see Stella Park for exactly who she really was. I'd lost a fiancé tonight, but I'd gained something much more valuable: absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. In the weeks following what everyone started calling the engagement party incident, my life transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. Far from being the scorned, heartbroken man everyone expected me to become, I found myself liberated, energized, and more focused than I'd been in years. Cloud Sync Technologies experienced an unprecedented surge in business. Word of the engagement party drama had spread through Millbrook's tight-knit business community, but instead of damaging my reputation, it had somehow enhanced it. Potential clients were impressed by the strategic thinking and elaborate planning I'd demonstrated. If Arthur Watson can orchestrate something that sophisticated to protect himself personally, one CEO told me during a meeting, imagine what he can do for my company's data security. Within 2 months, we'd signed 3 major contracts worth over $2 million combined. I hired 4 new developers, moved to a larger office space in the prestigious Meridian Business District, and even started getting calls from venture capital firms interested in investing. Felix, who had become something of a legend around the office for his performance as a fake billionaire, got promoted to senior developer with a substantial raise. But while my professional life soared, Stella's attempts to contact me became increasingly desperate and erratic. It started with the phone calls from Millbrook Airport the night of the party, -30-7 missed calls, and a voicemail where she was alternately screaming and crying, "Arthur, you bastard! How could you humiliate me like this? This was cruel and manipulative and ... Please call me back. We need to talk." When I didn't respond, she tried showing up at my apartment. I'd installed a doorbell camera after the party, so I could see her standing in my hallway at all hours, sometimes professionally dressed, as if she'd come straight from work. Other times disheveled and obviously drunk. She'd ring the bell repeatedly, pound on the door, and plead through the intercom. "Arthur, I know you're in there," she'd say, her voice echoing in the hallway. "I can explain everything. Yes, I made a mistake, but you have to understand. I thought Felix was real. Any woman would have been tempted. You can't blame me for wanting a better life." The security footage was almost comical. Stella would cycle through different emotional states during these visits: anger, bargaining, desperation, and back to anger. Sometimes she'd leave gifts, expensive bottles of wine, designer ties, even a Rolex watch that probably cost more than Felix's monthly salary. I donated everything to charity without opening the packages. 3 weeks after the party, she tried a different approach. She contacted my parents directly, spinning a story about how I'd lost my mind and was destroying our relationship over a silly misunderstanding. My mother's response, which she later shared with me, was swift and brutal. "Stella, dear, I watched you abandon my son for another man in front of 200 people. There's no misunderstanding about that." But the most pathetic attempt came when she showed up at CloudSync's offices during business hours. Felix happened to be in the lobby when she arrived, and he called me immediately. "Arthur, Stella's here, and she's not doing great." I looked down from my office window and saw her in the parking lot, sitting in her BMW and crying into her phone. She'd clearly lost weight. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, and she looked genuinely desperate. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. That feeling evaporated when I learned what she'd been doing since the party. Through mutual acquaintances, I discovered that Stella had been spreading her own version of events around Millbrook's social circles. According to her narrative, I was a controlling, manipulative man who had psychological problems and had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to torture her for having normal career ambitions. The problem with Stella's story was that too many people had witnessed the truth. The engagement party had been filled with influential members of Millbrook's business and social communities, and they'd all seen her greed, her lies, and her willingness to humiliate me publicly. Her reputation in the luxury real estate world began to crumble as clients started questioning her integrity and professionalism. Meanwhile, something unexpected was developing in my personal life. Dr. Ruby Conti, a brilliant cybersecurity consultant, who'd been at the engagement party as Owen's guest, had reached out to discuss a potential business collaboration. Ruby specialized in protecting companies from social engineering attacks essentially. elaborate schemes designed to manipulate people into revealing sensitive information. What you did with your engagement party, she told me during our first business meeting, was basically a masterclass in social engineering. You identified a weakness, created a scenario to test it, and executed flawlessly. I could use someone with your strategic thinking on my team. Our professional relationship developed quickly into something more personal. Ruby was everything Stella wasn't: brilliant, independent, genuinely successful in her own right, and completely unimpressed by material wealth. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic by choice, lived in a modest apartment filled with books and computer equipment, and found Stella's materialism genuinely puzzling. "I don't understand people who chase money for its own sake," Ruby said one evening as we worked late in my office. "Money should be a tool, not a goal. What's the point of having expensive things if you have to compromise your integrity to get them?" 6 months after the engagement party, I was having dinner with Ruby at a small Italian restaurant in downtown Millbrook when we spotted Stella across the room. She was with a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged, expensively dressed, with the slightly desperate look of someone trying too hard to appear successful. Her laugh was too loud, her gestures too animated, and she kept checking her phone. "Is that her?" Ruby asked quietly. I nodded, watching Stella perform for her new target. "Looks like she's back to her old patterns." Ruby studied Stella for a moment, then shook her head. "I actually feel sorry for her. Imagine being so insecure that you need constant external validation. Imagine never being satisfied with what you have because you're always looking for something better." That's when I realized how completely I'd moved on. Stella Park had become a cautionary tale in my mind, a reminder of what happens when someone prioritizes appearances over authenticity. I felt no anger, no bitterness, just a kind of detached curiosity about how someone could live that way. But Stella hadn't moved on. As Ruby and I got up to leave, Stella noticed us. Her face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, pain, and then something that looked like rage. She excused herself from her date and intercepted us near the door. "Arthur," she said, her voice tight with forced civility. "How nice to see you. And this must be your ... friend." "Stella," I replied calmly. "This is Dr. Ruby Conti, my girlfriend." The word girlfriend hit Stella like a physical blow. She looked Ruby up and down, clearly cataloging her simple dress, minimal makeup, and lack of expensive jewelry. "How interesting," Stella said with barely concealed disdain. Ruby, for her part, simply smiled. "Nice to meet you, Stella. Arthur's told me all about you." As we walked away, I could feel Stella's eyes burning into our backs, but I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me anymore. I had everything I actually wanted: a successful business, genuine friends, and a woman who loved me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. Stella could keep chasing her illusions of wealth and status. I'd found something real 2 years later. I stood on the deck of my new home, overlooking Millbrook Harbor, watching Ruby arrange flowers in the kitchen through the sliding glass doors. We'd bought the house together 6 months earlier, not because either of us needed to prove anything, because we genuinely wanted to build a life together. It was modest by Stella's standards, but it was ours, paid for with money we'd both earned through our own hard work. Cloud sync technologies had grown beyond my wildest expectations. We now employed 37 people, had offices in 3 cities, and I'd just signed a deal to license our security software to a Fortune 500 company. Felix had become my business partner, using his share of the company's success to start a scholarship fund for underprivileged students pursuing computer science degrees. His experience playing a billionaire had taught him something valuable about the difference between having money and needing to display it. "You know what's funny?" Felix had told me recently. "When I was pretending to be wealthy, I felt like I was constantly performing. Now that I actually have money, I don't need anyone to know about it. It's real wealth whispers, fake wealth shouts." Ruby emerged onto the deck carrying 2 cups of coffee, and I couldn't help but smile at the contrast. Between her and Stella, where Stella had always been perfectly polished and designer dressed, Ruby was beautiful in an effortless way, brilliant, confident, and completely unconcerned with appearances. She wore jeans and one of my old CloudSync t-shirts, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she was more radiant than Stella had ever been in her most expensive outfits. "Penny for your thoughts," Ruby said, settling into the chair beside me. "Just thinking about how different things could have been," I replied, taking her hand. "If I hadn't discovered who Stella really was," Ruby squeezed my fingers. "You would have figured it out eventually. People like that can't hide their true nature forever." Engagement party just accelerated the inevitable. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a notification from a local news app. The headline made me pause. "Local real estate agent Stella Park arrested for wire fraud and high-end property scam," showed the article to Ruby, who read it with growing amazement. According to the report, Stella had been caught manipulating property listings and sale prices, skimming money from client transactions over the past 18 months. The investigation had started when one of her wealthy targets, a legitimate businessman, not another fake billionaire, had discovered discrepancies in his property purchase and contacted authorities. "The irony is perfect," Ruby murmured. "She spent so much time chasing money that she eventually started stealing it." I thought about Stella's trajectory since our engagement party disaster. After her reputation in Millbrook's luxury market had crumbled, she'd apparently become increasingly desperate, willing to take bigger and bigger risks to maintain her lifestyle. The woman who had once criticized my modest startup income was now facing federal charges for financial crimes. Felix called me an hour later, having seen the same news report. "Arthur, did you see what happened to Stella?" "I saw it," I replied. "Can't say I'm surprised." "You know what this proves?" Felix said. "Your test at the engagement party didn't create her problems, it revealed them. She was always going to end up here. You just saved yourself from being dragged down with her." That evening, Ruby and I attended the annual Millbrook Business Excellence Awards, where CloudSync was being honored for our contribution to the local tech industry. As I accepted the award, I looked out at the audience and spotted some familiar faces from that disastrous engagement party 2 years earlier. They were applauding enthusiastically. I could see the respect and admiration in their eyes. After the ceremony, Owen Davies approached us with a huge grin. "Arthur, I owe you an apology. That night at your engagement party, I thought you'd lost your mind. Now I realize you were the sanest person in the room." "How so?" I asked. "You were willing to risk everything to learn the truth about someone, before legally binding yourself to them for life. Most people just hope for the best and deal with the consequences later. You took control of your own destiny." As Ruby and I drove home that night, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Can I ask you something? Do you ever feel guilty about what you did to Stella? About the elaborate test, the public humiliation?" I considered the question carefully. "No," I said finally. "I gave her every opportunity to make the right choice. I didn't force her to lie about being single, didn't force her to agree to leave. With Felix, didn't force her to abandon our relationship for money. All I did was create a scenario where her true priorities would be revealed. And now I have a successful business, genuine relationships, and a partner who loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. Stella has criminal charges and a destroyed reputation because she never learned the difference between wanting a better life and being willing to sacrifice everything decent to get it." Ruby smiled and took my hand. "I love that about you, you know? You don't just react to life, you shape it. You see problems coming and you solve them before they can hurt you." As we pulled into our driveway, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 2 years ago, I'd been engaged to a woman who saw me as a temporary inconvenience on her path to wealth. Tonight, I was coming home to a woman who celebrated my successes, supported my dreams, and chose me not because of what I could give her, but because of who I was. The engagement party test had cost me a fiancée, but it had given me something infinitely more valuable: the knowledge that real love doesn't come with conditions. Real success doesn't require stepping on others. And real happiness comes from building something genuine rather than chasing something false. Sometimes, the best way to win isn't to fight harder, it's to step back and let people show you exactly who they really are. Stella Park had done exactly that, and in revealing her true nature, she'd given me the greatest gift possible. freedom from a life built on lies. I wouldn't change a single thing about how it all unfolded. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.